Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 woodworking aids you can build in your shop just out of scrap wood. This one's my favorite. Ow. These 6 jigs start from really easy to build and kind of go up the hill to intermediate. So what we're going to do is start out with the easy ones. This little thingy is really handy to have around in the shop, and I'll show you in just a second how we use it. It's just 3 pieces of plywood glued in a C-channel and a little butt stop up here on the top. Now I call this thing my thingy. What we use this thing for the most is here at the vise. If I want to position a piece of material in really accurately in my vise, I put it right up there, make sure it's nice and tight up against that stop, and then tighten the vise down. Now that holds it at a very nice level, very accurate and parallel to my work surface. So if I'm working on drawers, I can just flip the thingy around, lay my drawer box top on top of that, or drawer side on that. And if I'm doing dovetails, I can mark my layout, or if I'm doing some other kind of joinery, I can do all my layout right here with it perfectly level with this. Now, that's not the only thing we use it for. The thingy has other uses as well. Something else I use this for all the time is cutting small pieces. Like if I have to cut dowel, I can put this stop right up against my bench and then just use a handsaw, and the side of that gives me a nice guide to get a pretty square cut. That's not something I'd want to try and cut on a chop box. I also use it for small pieces like this as well. It's easy just to hold it in, gives you a nice secure hold without a lot of effort. And then again, you have those sides here that create kind of, they're not perfect square, but pretty dang close to square. Not too shabby. I found one that's 4 inches by 8 inches square with 3-inch sides. Really works well for an all-around size. Then I just add a little piece of material as a stop, and that's just a 3/4 inch wide strip. And I usually offset it a little bit in case I want to set something on that lip. It's a really, really simple build. Now, you don't have to build your thingy this small if you want a bigger thingy. You just use a little bit more scrap material. And really the only reason I called it a thingy is so when I lose it, I can ask Maggie where my thingy is. Now, like I mentioned before, I sometimes use to hold vertical material, but I have one that's a lot more stable, and I use this probably more often for holding material vertically. So I use this to hold a panel up like that, and then I can just use one of my clamps to clamp it to it, and that holds it there, so kind of giving me a third hand. What's also really nice about this with that bigger base is if I want to put stock in vertically, we're going to pretend like this is the leg of a piece of furniture. It can hold material vertically that's quite tall and be very stable, so I don't have to worry about it coming off. And the higher I get, the more apt I am to go to a big like speed clamp or something that's got some pressure to hold it on there. To build this jig, I start with a 9-inch by 9-inch piece of scrap plywood and cut a 4.5 by 4.5 cutout from the center of it. Then I add a piece of material that's 3.5 inches tall, 4.5 inches deep, and glue and screw it because I want a little extra security. I don't really worry too much about building supports on it. Just like that seems to be plenty strong for holding plywood or legs or the kind of things that we do here in the shop. But this is one of those projects, again, crazy simple to build, very useful to have around the shop, and that's kind of going to be the focus of today's video. Is not super simple, all of them, but all of them are really handy aids to have when you're trying to build something, because each one of them has their place. Now, let's move on to the next one. This is another material holding device, and it's a little bit strange looking, but if I loosen up my knobs here and I lift straight up, I can raise the height of this from 3 inches up to about 9.5 inches, and I can lock it down in any one of those positions. Now, this isn't my idea. This came from another source, and I'll share that with you in a minute. But I did add my own touches to it. This part on the top right here has a little belly in it. So if I'm holding round material, especially a long piece over at the drill press, I can put this on my bench, raise it up to the height I need. It'll cradle that round material. And I don't always have round material. So on the other side, it's flat. So I can also hold flat material as well. It's probably not one of those things that I would have thought of on my own. I'd have kept just stacking blocks of wood or one of those things. But when I saw this years ago in a magazine article, I knew I was going to build it and add my own little features to it. Now, I first saw this jig in Shop Notes magazine. And in my opinion, Shop Notes was the best woodworking magazine of all time. They came out in 1992. They published 6 issues a year until 2014, when they unfortunately kind of closed the publication. Not sure why. But to this day, it is still my favorite woodworking magazine. And fortunately, they're still available online. So I spent the $80 to get access to all 66 issues and thousands of pages of their great woodworking jigs and plans.
It's been a very valuable source for inspiration and ideas over the years. 3 of the jigs that I'm sharing with you today were inspired by articles I found in the pages of this amazing resource.
Now, I've seen some bad actors take projects from shop notes and call them their own and make videos about them and maybe even sell plan sets. Now, I don't really think that's cool, but that's my opinion, and opinions vary. But I do firmly stand in the camp of give credit where credit is due. So while I'm showing you these 3 jigs today that the ideas were at least inspired by shop notes, I'm going to share that with you. And these were the first of the 3 that I'll show you.
To build this jig, I start with a piece that's 1/2 inches thick, 12 inches long, and 3 inches wide. And then I add another section set in a 1/2 inch back. That piece is 3 inches tall total from the base. And then I want to put an 8 3/4 inch long stepped groove in there for the sliding action. Now on the back, I'm going to add 2 spacers that are 1/2 inch wide, and then my first articulating arm, 1/2 inch wide, and half the distance between the fixed hole and the end of the stepped groove. And then I cut my other 2 pieces and put on my hardware. Now the hardware I'm using for this is from Bow Products. Now let me show you that real quick.
I've switched to Bow knobs for all my jigs and fixtures just because they are hands down the best knobs I've ever found out on the market. And one of the things that's really important to me when I'm buying knobs is that the steel is encased in the injection mold, so there's no popping it out if you twist too hard. The other thing I like about it is they sell this really cool T-slot hardware with the knob. So you can either buy the knob separately, or you can get packs like this, which have a variety of T-slot sizes. Now these are a 5/16 inch bolt, but they do slide right in regular T-slot hardware, which makes them pretty handy. The only real downside I found to the Bow knobs is that they didn't have a 1/4 inch knob available, but I just heard through the grapevine that they're fixing that. In a few short weeks, they'll have a 1/4 inch version of this available on the market, and I'm super excited about that. So you're going to see Bow knobs in most of my jig builds. I'll put a link down in the description box if you want to check it out. I'll also put a link down there for Shop Notes magazine if that's something you guys are interested in learning more about. Now the link for this will be an affiliate link, so it'll help support our channel. The link for Shop Notes, we're not making any money off of that. I just think it's a great resource that anybody should check out if they're interested. This one was inspired by, I think, a 2008 article in Shop Notes magazine for a bandsaw pattern following jig or fixture. The one they had mounted on the bandsaw table. And while it was a really cool idea, I wanted something that was a little bit more practical and had more application. So I thought I'd mount it to the riser on the bandsaw, so when I adjust that up and down, I can get really thick cuts and it's still really stable. This section right here is adjustable. I use a bow knob and then I can loosen and tighten that up so I can get different depths, however tight I want to get to the pattern, or if I want a real big offset, that controls the offset from the pattern, and then I can tighten it down. I've also made different tips for different following needs. Now in this case, I'm using the medium one. Now this system is not great for tight turns. It works really good for slow sloping turns. So think the side of furniture or chair backs or something along that. It works really, really well for. I've also made it adjustable front to back. Now you can adjust the height somewhat here up and down the bar, but I have another version I'm working on that'll make it adjustable in the body of the jig itself. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into this system right here. There's a few things that I want to change about it, and I may do a full YouTube video on it coming up in the future sometime. But so far, it's proving to be a really handy woodworking aid for template following on the bandsaw. The last woodworking aid I want to show you that was inspired by Shop Notes are these. Now, these are crazy simple to make. You can cut them on a bandsaw or write a CNC file, or you can do it with a jigsaw, really. And they come in pretty handy. I don't really need to show you how they can be used because we all kind of get how they're used. So this is what they look like taken apart, and they're almost identical with the exception of this center section. And it doesn't really matter where in this area, as long as there's kind of a spherical shape where they can rub on each other, they're gonna work, and then the rubber bands will hold them together. Now, if I were gonna use these a lot or make a bunch of them, I'd also add a little piece on top on both sides to hold it together and from twisting out. But let's be honest, this article is many years old, still a fun project. But now clamps like this have become really affordable. I think one of these is like $7. So it wouldn't be hard to build up a whole bunch of these in a shop over a period of time. These happen to be one of the most affordable ones on the market. They're made by Taylor Tools, and I like these a lot. They have a great grip on them, and then you can use them for edge banding as well. So I'll put a link down in the description box below. But if you wanted to make a bunch of these out of scrap wood or wanted to save your $7, these are definitely a good option. The last woodworking aid on today's dance card is this crazy looking jig. Now this is about 8¼ inches tall, but it expands all the way out to 28½ inches, which makes this really great for spacing things. I'm gonna need you guys to use your imagination. This is one side of a box. You can see I'm going through a great effort here. I did not want to build a box to show you how we use these. They're adjustable from the 8¼ to the 28½, so I could use them on the inside of a box and adjust them to the height I need. If I'm just doing pocket hold shelves, I can line that right up where I need to, put my pocket holes in, and I'm done. The other thing I use them for probably more often is when I'm putting drawer slides inside of an empty carcass. I can line that up where I need it, adjust it to its height, put a drawer slide in, flip it to the other side, do the same. So they come in really handy for those kind of things.
Building the spacer is pretty straightforward. I start with a 1/2 piece of plywood, cut it down to 20 inches long, 2½ inches wide, and I put a 5½ stepped groove in one end in the center of the piece, like 3/4 inch from the end, and on the other end I drill a 5/16 hole. And I'm going to need 3 of those, and I'm going to need 4 of the articulating arms, which are 20 inches long, 1½ inches wide, and there's 2 5/16 holes 3/4 inches from the end. I will need 2 spacers. They're just 1½ inches in diameter, again, with a 5/16 hole drilled in the center. Now this is all 1/2 inch material. And for the top and bottom, to give me a little more stability, I just cut a piece of plywood that's 20 inches by 1.5 inches, and those get installed on the top and bottom of the spacer.
The 2 little spacers I was talking about go right here and right here. Again, I'm using the bow knobs, and I'm using their flat T-track hardware on the back. That makes it really easy to do those recessed grooves. So the spacers come in handy a lot around the shop, and we're always finding uses for it, and it's a fun project, especially for some scrap wood. Hey, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found at least a couple of these systems useful, and maybe you can use them in your shop. All of these are pretty good scrap wood projects, depending on what scrap wood you have left laying around. Now, if you did find some of these useful or had some ideas around some of the systems, let me know down in the comments section below. We always love hearing your feedback. That wraps it up for this video. Thank you very much again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.